The man in the mask was planning to rob a bank. First, he shot the bank manager standing at the door, then took advantage of the chaos to rush into the bank, quickly dealing with all the security personnel. He then threw a set of speakers into the crowd, pressed his smartwatch, and played a pre-recorded voice message.
Everybody down. Put your palms on the floor. Cell phones out. Place them in front of you.
Faced with this group of heavily armed robbers, everyone had no choice but to comply. Then dragged the bank manager over and, using the recording as a threat, ordered the tellers to open the safe. 2 men were then dispatched to patrol the premises, while the rest quickly filled bags with money. In less than 2 minutes, they had easily taken away $3 million. Before leaving, they left a remote bomb, set to detonate if anyone stood up within 15 minutes. In the end, the leader of the robbers came to the bank manager's side, looked up at the surveillance cameras, and, as if announcing a sentence, pulled the trigger on the manager. 25 minutes later, the federal police finally arrived at the scene. Since it took 20 minutes for someone to call the police, the robbers had already disappeared without a trace. But what confused the police chief Nick most was, why did the robbers need to kill the bank manager, who was not resisting, when they could have just left? In addition, the police found a fingerprint on the speakers, but investigations revealed that the owner of the fingerprint had already been dead for 2 years. What was going on? Just as everyone was at a loss, the robbers suddenly began their next action, targeting another bank manager.
Drive to work. Unlock the safety deposit boxes. Exactly as you are instructed, and no one will be harmed.
Then, one of the robbers went to the manager's house, and the manager, terrified, brought the robber to the bank. He found an excuse to distract all the staff and open the safe door. He located the specific safe that the robber had indicated. Just as the safe was being opened, a female staff member suddenly came out of the restroom and found a group of robbers entering the bank. She panicked and tried to call the police but was stopped by the manager in time. However, at that moment, a security guard also walked in but didn't have time to draw his gun before he was shot dead by one of the robbers. They then put down the speakers,
On the ground. Cell phones in front of you.
opened the safe, took out the documents inside, and packed up all the cash. They brought the female staff member over and instructed her to apply pressure to the security guard's wound to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, the bank manager happened to arrive for work, but before he could get out of the car, a bomb was thrown in and the car exploded. The manager was in excruciating pain and struggling to breathe. The robbers opened the car door, dragged him out onto the ground, and with a knife, killed the manager right then and there. Deliberately leaving behind a bullet with a fingerprint, the robbers fled the scene once again. Within 2 days, 2 consecutive robberies occurred, resulting in the deaths of 2 bank managers. The robbers employed highly professional methods, leaving behind only 2 identical fingerprints and no other clues for the police. However, the most troublesome person was not the police, but Nathan, the big boss behind the 2 banks. It wasn't because of the mere millions that were stolen, but because of the important document inside the safe. He was extremely angry and, picking up a baseball bat, vented his frustration on the table. Shortly after, Nick started questioning the bank manager. Although there were no useful leads, he learned a suspicious detail from the manager. Nathan owned over 3,000 branches across the country but showed particular concern for the smallest branch, always checking the documents in the safe at night. Upon hearing this, Nick knew that this matter couldn't be so simple. He began to investigate Nathan and discovered that he had attended the funerals of both managers, accompanied by Senator John. Why would the deaths of 2 ordinary bank managers prompt the involvement of Senator John? Nick felt that something was amiss, but what surprised him even more was that the robbers were already prepared and initiated their 3rd operation. The heavily armed robbers sneaked into the bank, but instead of robbing money, they intended to kill the owner of the bank. However, just as they were about to act, they were spotted by federal police detective Nick, who happened to be investigating the bank.
Everybody down! Get out!
In response, one of the robbers immediately seized a security guard as a hostage, causing chaos on the scene. However, the robber quickly shot the hostage, revealing that his intention was to draw the attention of the security guard so that his accomplices could take the opportunity to kill the bank owner. Despite the numerous security guards in the bank, they were no match for the robbers' intense gunfire. In no time, only 1 bodyguard remained, standing protectively in front of the boss.
Lower your weapons and we will not harm you.
Knowing that he was no match for the robbers, the bodyguard was about to surrender when he was suddenly shot dead by one of the robbers.
What are you doing?
Detective Nick seized the opportunity to subdue the robber, while the robber in turn took a woman hostage. As the standoff continued, both parties agreed to release their hostages simultaneously. As the robber on the other side released the woman, Nick also let go of the robber he had in his grasp. He didn't want to provoke the robbers and cause more casualties, so he could only watch helplessly as they escaped. However, one of the robbers had been killed earlier, and Nick hoped to find some clues from his body. But the results left him disappointed because he discovered that there was no file information available about this particular robber. In addition, his fingerprints had been burned off, and even his teeth had been pulled out. It amazed Nick how someone with such discipline could conceal their identity so deeply. It was surely someone from the military. In an instant, Nick made a connection to the deliberately left fingerprints, which belonged to a military personnel named Mike. But that was all he had. Nick still had no leads on the entire case. Until the next day, he unexpectedly received a package sent by the robbers. Inside was the stolen document from the bank robbery. Finally, everything became clear, and the truth was revealed. The assault team received orders from their superiors to eliminate terrorists inside a building. However, when they had killed all of them, they discovered that they were just a group of American college students. Before they could react, a special forces team stormed in and began shooting at them relentlessly. The assault team was quickly wiped out. Little did they know that the person behind this was none other than Nathan, the current bank owner. He used the assault team to eliminate his own younger brother from the group of college students so that he could inherit all the family property. He then bribed the commander of the special forces, who was now a senator named John, to cover up the betrayal of the assault team and silence them all. The two bank managers who were killed were actually members of the assault team, and Nathan had bribed them to provide evidence for Nick. That's why they didn't participate in the operation. All the evidence was stored by Nathan in a safe deposit box in the form of files, with the intention of making everyone his pawns. When the special forces team discovered they had been manipulated and realized they had killed their own comrades, they felt immense guilt. After retiring from service for many years, they finally decided to fight fire with fire and take justice into their own hands to punish these demons. It didn't take long for Nick to receive news that Nathan was about to be exposed and was preparing to escape. Nick immediately dispatched his subordinates, John and James, to stop him. However, they were a step too late, and Nathan managed to escape in a helicopter. Luckily, Nick had a new lead. He found the former assault team captain, Mike, who was the owner of the two fingerprints deliberately left by the robbers. It turned out that the special forces team had realized something was wrong before they were about to kill Nathan. They secretly let him go. According to Mike's confession, Nick learned a shocking revelation. The former captain of the special forces team was none other than his current subordinate, John. It was then that Nick suddenly realized that the so-called leader of the robbers had been hiding within his own ranks all along. He immediately got into his car and rushed towards John and James, who were chasing Nathan. However, it was too late. John had already knocked out James and escaped. Months later, Nick received information that Nathan was in a city in Mexico. He went there alone and found Nathan, as well as John, who had been tracking Nathan to that location. They had a conversation, and Nick could understand John's motives. However, he couldn't forgive him for causing the deaths of innocent people. Later, Nick found Nathan and realized that he couldn't bring him back under the current circumstances. So, he picked up a fork and stabbed the seemingly glamorous devil. Nathan's bodyguard reacted and pulled out his gun, but John quickly shot him dead. After everything was settled, John put away his gun and left the bar under Nick's gaze. The story concludes.